Hi everybody, my name's Sean Seitz and this is my brother Eric Seitz. This is the first episode of Pioneer Survival Company. The plan for these videos is to offer people opportunities to learn new knowledge about the outdoors. We're going to be doing some product reviews and basically anything that we find interesting, we're going to bring that information to you to help you get a better understanding of how to survive, how to thrive, and how to be alive.
In today's world, you have to be ready to expect the unexpected. With the natural disasters and everything going on in the world around us, you never know where your next meal will be, if you'll be warm, what's going to happen.
The idea behind this is, when you think of survival situations, you think, hey, let's grab our bug out bag and go into the woods, and let's live off the land and build fires and act like cavemen. Which, that's all great. There might be an opportunity where you do have to use those skills, but we recognize the fact that not everybody out there can just do that. You haven't learned those traits yet, and we want to help you with that. But also, what we're thinking is 9 times out of 10, as my brother was saying, there's going to be situations where you're not going to have to leave your house. I mean, basically you're going to bug in. There could be a flood or a tornado, just something's going to keep you in there, and we're looking at like 72-hour survival scenarios. And one of the things that you might encounter is you're trapped in your house, you can't get out, and maybe help can't come to you. So what we want to do with this first video is just give you an idea of if you're trapped in your house. We're going to show you some stuff that in your very own backyard that you could do to help you provide medicine and maybe get a different food source or whatnot. So we're going to just kind of walk around and show you guys some different medicinal plants and different trees that you can use to help you with any sort of common ailment.
Alright, the first plant we're going to talk about is known as plantain. Plantain's pretty identifiable. It'll be a round type leaf, and it'll have veins going through the back of it. They're very distinguishable. I haven't noticed any other plant that really has veins quite like this. Also, as you can see here, they usually all grow around each other, and this soil is not quite as disturbed as other places I've seen, but it always grows in disturbed soil. The entire plantain plant is edible. The leaves, the stems, the roots, all of it. Plantain has many uses. It's an astringent, a diuretic, and an expectorant. It also has very strong drawing properties. Basically what I mean by drawing properties, you can make a poultice out of this by chewing it or grinding it up in some way into a paste. And say you had a splinter or a bee sting, you could actually use this poultice and apply it right to the sting or the splinter area, and it would actually pull the stinger or the piece of wood or thorn or whatever is in your skin out. Plantain is also very high in vitamins A, C, and K. It's one of the most widespread and easily found medicinal plants in North America.
Alright, so the next plant that we're going to talk about is the red clover. With stems getting up to about 10 inches in length, this thing can be found in meadows, fields, and basically any kind of like uprooted area. Alright, in addition to the 3 lobes here that you can see, I don't know if you can get a good shot of this here, but the caps on this plant can come in several different colors. White, like a reddish color, purple, yellow. This right here is more of a purplish colored one. But all parts of this plant are edible. So that's the great thing about the clover, and something to remember is you can eat everything on this. You can eat the leaves, the flowers here, even the roots can be taken out, and you can eat them raw. You can boil them up, you can use them as field greens for like a salad. You can even like take the heads on here, you can grind these things up, you can make a flour out of them. So I mean, this is a very versatile plant. So I mean, there are several varieties of this around North America, so there's always a good chance that if you're in a wooded setting or a meadow or some sort, you're going to be able to find one of these things, and it's going to provide you some valuable resources for food.
The next plant that we have to discuss is the hawthorn berry tree. It's fall right now, so really can't discuss the leaves that are on this tree because, well, they've all fallen off. But this will give us a good opportunity to discuss winter identification. This is one of the trees that are fairly easy to identify in the winter. The bark on this tree, as you can tell, is somewhat shaggy. It's kind of, I would almost say, a little bit pilling off or flaky. The entire tree is covered with these thorns. They can range anywhere from maybe half an inch up to, well, I'm looking at a few of these that are well over 2 inches. The hawthorn berry has many medical uses. I have to go ahead and give our disclaimer now, though. It hasn't been approved by the FDA at all, but there are quite a few medical studies going on right now, and I can actually say that I'm using hawthorn berry extract for high blood pressure, and it seems to be working. But as I said, you have to take that into account. It hasn't been approved by the FDA. The parts of the tree that are used for medicinal purposes are the berries and the leaves. They're usually dried out and turned into a powder, and it treats, well, as I said earlier, high blood pressure. It's also been, studies are finding, I should say, that it reduces cholesterol, and it's also good for heart health. The berries of the hawthorn tree are also edible. They can be used to make jellies and jam. I've never actually tried it myself, but I've been told it's kind of bitter. So you actually use this to mix in with other things. You wouldn't want to spread it on toast or a bagel or anything like that. I think that pretty much wraps up our description and medicinal uses of the hawthorn tree. Let's go ahead and move on to the next plant and see where we go from there.
Ooh, that was close. Alright, so the next thing I found here is dandelions. Dandelions are great. Just like the red clover I was talking about, every part of this plant's edible. And you can tell that it's a dandelion by the sawtooth shape of the leaves. Now, everybody knows what a dandelion is. You might not realize it. These things are found in open areas, they're found along roadsides, and you guys might know them as the big yellow nuisance plant that grows in your backyard that you're always trying to take care of. But like I said, everything on this plant is edible. As I was saying earlier, you can see the saw irregular tooth pattern of the leaf right here. And normally, if it wasn't fall, there would be a stalk coming out of it with the bright yellow cap. You can also tell, you know, once they start to die down, they kind of turn white, and they have the seeds on top. I don't have an example of it right now, but you can pull those seeds out, and those things are even edible on it. But just a couple other facts about it. You can basically just pick these leaves just as is. You can throw them directly into a salad, and I mean, that's tasty. I love dandelion leaves. They're good. You can dry these leaves out, and you can make tea out of them. You can also dig them up, and the roots are just like, I mean, basically like a carrot or something. You can dry them, you can crush them. I mean, people have even been known to take the roots and make some sort of like a coffee substitute out of them. These things are great as far as vitamins. They're a very rich source of vitamin A. And the name itself, dandelion, actually means lion's tooth. These are a great source. I mean, you can find them practically anywhere, and I love the taste of dandelion leaves. I mean, you can even boil them down like a spinach. So that's just another example of an edible plant that you can find in your backyard. Let's move on to the next one. The next tree we're going to discuss is the black walnut. Black walnut's typically found in mixed forest areas and bottomlands, so I mean it's typical to find this tree throughout North America. Just to give you a quick description of the leaves, they have alternating leaves and they usually have somewhere between 9 to 21 leaflets. The flowers are usually large and rounded with a thick, husky nut.
These ones?
So here's an example of one of the nuts that I found on the ground. As you can see, it's basically starting to rot because it's late in the season. Usually this would be more of a yellowish color, but it's basically a thick husk. It's got a black nut inside of it, and it is edible. Pretty much on this tree, the bark, the husks, and the leaves can all be harvested. So there's several uses for this. It's an anti-inflammatory, an astringent, antifungal, and it's antiseptic. You can actually make an infusion out of the inner bark of this tree, or you can actually also use the buds to help treat colds, constipation, and several other things. So the leaf tea is used to prevent infection, and it's also an insecticide. So you can actually make some sort of an infusion out of the leaf tea, and you can drink it. And then lastly, one of the other things I wanted to talk about was the nut that I showed you earlier. For years, they actually used the black walnut, and they would take the nuts, soak them in water, and they create a dye out of those. That dye almost has like an antiseptic property to it. You can use it actually to clean and disinfect wounds, but you can also let it sit there, and it leaches out the coloring, the tannins in the walnuts, and you could actually use that to dye fabrics. And lastly, the tannins that are in the tree can also be used for tanning hides. So as you can see, the black walnut is a very, very versatile tree, and it's a vast and valuable resource that you can find in your own backyard. Let's move on to the final one.
The final plant and tree that we have to discuss today is the white pine. Now, everybody knows what a pine tree looks like, or some type of conifer, so I'm going to go ahead and just skip over describing what a pine looks like, and just tell you how to identify the white pine. Let's go ahead and take a close-up of the needles here. Now the white pine, all you have to do is think of the word white. It's got 5 letters in it, and that is easy to identify these. Because if you look, if you separate these down, the pine needles are in clusters where they attach to the branch. And if you count these, there's 5 needles there. 5 needles, 5 letters, and the word white. Makes it really easy. Now one of my favorite uses of the white pine is pine needle tea. Basically, you just take the pine needles, usually for a small batch, about a quart batch, you'd cut up a cup of pine needles. And you just bring the water to a boil, take it off the stove, your fire, or whatever you're heating it up on, and pour the pine needles in, and let it set for about 15 minutes. Now, pine needle tea is extremely good for sore throats. Also, in the pioneer times, when the pioneers first came over, they were suffering from scurvy. The Native Americans told them about pine needle tea because it is very, very high in vitamin C, and it will cure scurvy. You can also make a poultice out of the bark of the white pine and the needles. Basically, earlier in the video, we had talked about to make a poultice, you either chew it up or you kind of just mash it up in some way. With pine needles, I would not recommend chewing it up because it's not going to taste very good. Now, this poultice can be used for several different things. It can be used for backaches, and it can also be used as headaches. Basically, you just apply it to your temple or the front of your forehead. The final part of the white pine that we're going to talk about is the resin or the sap or pine pitch, however you'd like to refer to it. Basically, any open wound on the tree, this tree will produce a sap or a pitch in order to heal itself. This pine pitch can be used for multiple different things. Medicinally, it can be used to treat wounds. If you have an open wound, it will seal it up, keep all bacteria, things like that out, any dirt. It'll basically sew your wound up and keep it from getting infected. The final use for pine pitch would be for fire starting. You basically, it collects in a ball on the tree. You can break this ball off and melt it down. That can be used to make instant fire. Some people call it surefire. You can also just take that chunk off and actually light that directly, and it will burn really, really well. Pretty much all parts of the pine tree burn really well. That can be found in dead stumps of the white pine, or where the branches, dead branches connect to the actual trunk of the tree. It will be an orangish or a red color, and you can actually break off the limbs or take parts of the trunk out and extract that from it, and it is extremely, extremely good for starting fires. We'll have videos in the future showing how to harvest the fat wood and how to start fires with those.
Alright, well, this is Sean and Eric with Pioneer Survival Company. We'd like to thank you for watching our first episode, and there will be more to come. Please feel free to follow us on all social media at Pioneer Survival Company, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, we're available on Facebook.
We're also available on Instagram, and you can email us with any questions at pioneersurvivalcompany@gmail.com.
Thanks a lot. We'll be seeing you soon.